There's something about your face, can't stop looking your way. What do you do to me? You make it hard to breathe. Ooh. I'm tired of the people that talk about nothing, and I'm not wasting this moment. Even though I know that letting you go would be crazy. Thinking no.
My launch story is kind of a three-part story, so bear with me. So I always wanted to be a music journalist. You know, I was kind of lucky. My parents had really good taste in music when I was young, so I was that kid in kindergarten, like, who knew who David Bowie was. So by the time I was 12, I knew I wanted to be a music journalist. And then when I was 17, I got my first fake ID. So I was able to start going to local clubs from Connecticut. So I used my ID to go to clubs in New Haven, Hartford, and like all the way up to Boston. And at all the clubs were fanzines, you know, these crappy little homemade papers about the local music scene. So I kind of gathered them all up and I was like, I gotta write for them. And I had no experience, of course, except just reading a lot and listening to music. I'll admit I did not have good taste in music at that time, but it didn't stop me. So I just kind of cold called all of the fanzines. And this is gonna age me greatly, but cold calling at that time meant you're gonna fax them or mail them a letter. So I faxed and mailed all these little fanzines, and finally one of them probably felt sorry for me because I was clearly like really aggressive and eager. They're like, okay, we'll give you a shot. You can write something on spec. So I reviewed my favorite local band. It's the worst piece of music journalism that's probably ever been printed. And I submitted it, and for whatever reason, they printed it. And then from there on, I spent like about a year and a half just writing for free for fanzines. So I was 17, 18 when I did that. Then I finally gathered enough clips to approach the national magazines. And my favorite magazine was not Rolling Stone, it was Hit Parader, which is embarrassing a little bit too. But I really wanted to write for Hit Parader magazine because I was more into like the hard rock and metal and glam rock scenes. And so I did something really goofy to get in there. So instead of just pitching them like a normal person would, which again at that time was fax or mail, I created a mock Hit Parader magazine out of construction paper, Sharpies, and glue. So I took their magazine and I called mine Carrie's Clips, and I did it in the Hit Parader font. And then I put on the cover like one of my feature stories I did for one of those fanzines. Then when you open it up and there was the section for the editorial staff, that's where I put my resume and bio. And then I cut out all of their other section headers, so like live reviews, and I glued in one of my live reviews, and then CD reviews, and I glued that in. And it's something like a child would do, but I was 19, so it's a little cringeworthy right now. But I did that as a way to stand out. And then instead of faxing, I couldn't fax it, didn't want to mail it, I spent money on a personal messenger service to hand deliver it, to get it on the editor's desk. And they told me later, like, they just kind of laughed because they're like, what, this girl is crazy, like this is insane. But they said yes. And so my first paid writing assignment was for Hit Parader magazine. I was 19, and it was a 2-page feature on the Black Crowes, and I got paid $150. And then the third part of the story is, so then I went to school for journalism with a focus on rock journalism. Rock music journalism. And so I just did a bunch of internships and kept writing. And by the time I graduated, there was a job open at Billboard magazine in LA that I wanted. And I did the same kind of aggressive thing. I didn't do construction paper this time, but I faxed them, I called them, and I sent a messenger service with my resume and clips. And I was just super aggressive, and I didn't let up. And they kind of told me one of the reasons they hired me was just because anyone who wants this job, the paid $19,000 a year so badly, like, let's give it to her. And then the rest kind of just snowballed from there. But yeah, I did some weird little aggressive, annoying things that all of these editors still make fun of me for today, but it worked. You know, a lot of things motivate me and drive me, but the biggest thing, and I don't know if this is cliche or maybe it's not. Maybe people just aren't honest with themselves. But my biggest driving factor is the fear of failure and the fear of kind of being a has-been or resting on my laurels. Because I started out so young and because I accomplished a lot when I was younger. Like when I got to Billboard magazine, I think when I was 23, I was a section editor and I was their youngest section editor in their 100-year history. When I was 26, I was named like one of the most influential people in the music industry. Like I had a bunch of these things happening through my 20s and early 30s. I got my first book deal when I was 30. A lot of stuff happened early. And so I'm always afraid, like I never wanted my 20s to be my best decade. So I think that fear hit in my 30s where I was like, okay, I gotta really work at this. And what I try to do is just make sure like I'm always upping my last project. Like every project can't be that 5-star project, but like at least every few years, there's got to be something that's like really stands out that you're really proud of, that kind of defines that era of your career. And I'm 3 decades into it now. So like I get to look back and be like, okay, this decade I accomplished all that, then that. And I'm constantly just trying to make sure that my last decade is never my best decade, that I'm always doing something new and innovative that's going to define me and keep moving me forward. Me hours to dig up. So these candles, they are white little candles I have not lit. They are from Kurt Cobain's memorial. The vigil that they held the night after his body was found in Seattle. So here's the story. I was a 23-year-old reporter at Billboard magazine at the time. And this was April 1994. And Sub Pop Records, which was Nirvana's first label, invited me up to Seattle for the weekend for I think it was their 5th or 6th anniversary party. So I got flown up just as a perk, to go to this party. This was before cell phones, so I get to Seattle, get in the cab, get to my hotel. I don't know that anything happened until I get to my hotel room and there's 10 messages waiting for me. And I just went, holy shit, who died? And I found out Kurt Cobain died. And so I had to, instead of going to this party and having fun, I had to hit the ground running and cover this story. And at 23, it's like, that was a pretty big story. Like I did not know what I was doing. So I hit the ground running and just started doing interviews. You had to call the police. I went to Kurt's house, took photos. I have a photo of the stretcher. It was all like so overwhelming and intense. The next day was the big vigil at the Space Needle in Seattle. And so I was just the man on the street reporting, and I went to it and I just saved as much stuff as I could. I just knew I was in the middle of one of the biggest music stories of the decade, and so I tried to save a few little things from all the major points in my career, and this was a big one. And this is the one that makes me tear up because it's so sad, and the story gets sadder to me as the years go on. But I ended up writing a book on Nirvana, so I got to put some of my experience about what it was like to cover it and be there in the middle of it. And so these are the candles from his memorial, the weekend his body was found. And I cherish that because I was part of history, but I was also, it was part of my career, but it's also, just part of rock and roll history.
How how did I get started? It's a great question. I started coaching about 5 years ago. I've been coaching full-time for 5 years. So a little bit before that, I started coaching informally. I was coaching my friends, and I started getting some coaching training and was actually trained as a vegan lifestyle coach. And that wasn't quite aligned, even though I am vegan and I love that, but I didn't really want to be coaching around health. And so I just started coaching more generally about life and about communication and confidence and relationships. And it wasn't until I dove into my own relationship to my sexuality, my sensuality, my relationships with men, my relationships with women, my sisterhood relationships, I started doing a deep dive around that and all of my blocks and discomfort and limiting beliefs around these things, because I was super frozen and stuck in the area of intimacy. I think, I don't know what the saying is, but, it's like you teach the thing you most need to master, you teach the thing that you most need to work on. And that was me around intimacy. Like, I started learning so much and immersing so much in tools and practices around sexuality and orgasm and pleasure and desire. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I am so excited about this, and this is transforming my life. I have to teach this. And so then I started just naturally integrating it into my already existing coaching business about 3 years ago. So I've been coaching for 5 years, and then for about 3 years, I've been doing the intimacy focused work, pleasure and desire focused work, mainly with women, and I love it. I'm so motivated by the women that I work with and seeing their transformations. Like, it is so incredible to witness the metamorphosis in front of me of women going from second guessing and living from obligation and, social conditioning and fear and shame, which is, plagues many of us in our culture, and watching them go from that type of life, kind of withholding their truth, not really expressing themselves fully, not living in their pleasure, to gaining these tools and practices that I teach and just completely opening. It's incredible to witness and sharing vulnerable desires, sharing new business ideas, having new sex, experiences with their partner or a new person, and reaching these new levels of pleasure and truth in their life. It is so inspiring to me. Like, I was just watching a video yesterday in the Facebook group of the program that I'm leading, Pleasure Mastery, right now. And I was just so moved by this woman who's, she's in the Midwest. She was very conservative, quite tightly wound in a way, and very secretive and sort of protective, and just kind of put on the good mother sort of facade, and I'm watching this video of her, and she's just sharing this super tender desire that is just so beautiful. And it was hard for her to even say it. It was so tender and vulnerable, and for her to just share, and she, had tears in her eyes, and she was just sort of melting and opening. It was so beautiful to watch. And I'm like, this is incredible. And this woman, before this program, would have never spoken like this or allowed herself to dream like this or followed this kind of tender desire it's just naturally arising in her. So I feel really moved and motivated by watching women evolve and get so much from these principles and philosophies that I teach. And I'm just so excited for more. It's it just really motivates me to keep sharing and teaching. Started pondering this question, when we first connected, I was thinking something that I own, I don't really feel very attached to my physical possessions. I really don't, especially I live in Bali. I've left most of it in LA and have stayed here for a year. And it's what physical possessions? I can always create more. But when I actually felt into it, I'm like, wow, this is the thing that I am so grateful that I can own is my desire. My desires lead my life, right? I live a desire-led life, and I own that. And I always listen to my desire. My desire is my compass. And that is just so not the case for most people, right? We're so driven by what we think we should do, what we think we have to do, what we think will make us money, what will give us safety, what will give us comfort. And, you know, a lot of times my desires do not give me safety or comfort. A lot of times they're like, that makes no logical sense. That is so far-fetched, or, oh my God, will that actually give me what I want? But like the deeper calling inside of me, or the whisper, is clear. And so I really own my desires and listen to them and honor them and have reverence for what I want. And that is, to me, profound and revolutionary. And it's taken me a lot of work to acquire that ownership. Like, it has taken me so much inner work and healing, and not to mention hundreds of thousands of dollars of investing in coaches and retreats and programs to get to this point in my work and myself and my life, to listen to her, you know, the inner voice, the inner wisdom, the inner goddess in me, that desire, and to fully own it and follow it. And so I'm really proud of that ownership. And I'm really proud of how the inner work it's taken to acquire that.
Yeah.
So my writing career started completely by accident. I was a graphic designer working in the book publishing industry for about 25 years at that point. And then my husband died very suddenly in 2003, and I was widowed. I had a young daughter who was about 6 at the time. And about 6 months after he died, I discovered that he'd been leading a second life, and in fact had been involved with a woman in my town. She was the mother of one of my daughter's friends. It was about as sordid as you could imagine, and truly shocking for everybody that knew us. And friends would come over to my house, and they would sort of shake their heads and go, "Julie, this is just so crazy. You have to write a book." And I'd look at them and go, no way. I had no idea. Even though I'd been in the book publishing business so many years, I had no idea even where to begin. And then one day, I guess a few weeks later, I went to a yoga class, and at the end of the class, there was this woman there that I kind of knew her a little bit socially. Frankly, I was kind of terrified of her. She was a journalist, and you know, so anyway, I was kind of intimidated. She called me over and said, I think it was something like, "Word on campus is that you're writing a book." And I looked at her and I was like, "I don't know where you heard that, and that's not what's happening." And she said, "No, Julie, you don't understand. When something like this happens, it's a story that has to be told." And she said, "I want you to have lunch with me." And we met at a diner. And I remember even what we ate. It was like, I think I had a tuna melt. I don't know why I remember that. But, you know, details are always important in writing. And anyway, she just said, "I want you to do this." She gave me instructions, which were go home, sit at your desk every day for 20 minutes, see what happens, don't edit, don't censor yourself. And then sort of like a doctor, she was like, "Call me next week, we'll have lunch again. I'm going to check up on you." And believe it or not, that's how the first book sort of came to be. It took about 3 years, and that's how it all unfolded. So you never know.
Well, that's an incredible story. Are you still close with her to this day?
Not at all. After that, we had lunch a few times, and then after that, I never saw her again.
Once you just got started, you realized that.
It was just like she was sort of the creative angel who swept in. And I had other help as well from other people along the way, a lot of wonderful editors and people who gave me advice, because really I was such a newbie. Even though I'd worked in publishing for all those years, I'd never really tried to imagine what it was like to actually write a book instead of just design the book cover for a book. And it was quite a different experience. So I came late, but just to show that it can happen at any time. You just need a good story.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to realize that you don't have to study something in school, or you can start something later in your life too and be great at it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You just need discipline and determination. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you ready for the second question?
Mm-hmm.
So what drives and motivates you each day?
So I want to say what motivates me every day is a complete fear of failure. I just really, I've always been a very disciplined person. I've always worked hard. But I feel that, once you have managed to write one book, you just feel this kind of drive to keep going. And then stories come and you find yourself needing to tell them. So the book that I just finished that I'm going to be publishing in April is about my mother. It's a family history story. And it took a long time to kind of evolve, but you just got to kind of keep at it every day and things will come together. It's actually quite miraculous. You start with nothing, the empty page, and if you just keep on going, eventually you'll have 300 pages. So. Yes, and I was amazed that you were going to make me choose an object, because I'm sort of a collector by nature. I have all kinds of stuff around. I collect interesting pebbles from a beach and islands in Maine where I go in the summertime, and all kinds of trinkets from my travels. So I thought, wow, they're really going to make me choose. But I would say that if I'm being asked to choose, the object is a small gift that my daughter gave me, when she was young, which is this little box here. And one of the things that I like to collect is actually bird nests. So I have kind of a collection of them. And for a while, people who found out that I collected bird nests would send them to me from around the world. I got one from France. I got one from Asia, so probably in violation of, international import laws. But at any rate, when my daughter was young, she made me this little present, which is in a little box. And inside the little box is a little bird nest that she made me out of twigs and leaves. And and a card, and I've always kept it near me. And then the top is decorated with, I'm not sure what these mean, but they meant something to my daughter when she did it. And it just is sort of this little precious thing that sometimes when you're a parent, it's hard to remember the feeling of when your children were young. And whenever I look at this little box, I always remember that, what it was like when she was young, and that we went through a lot of, some real challenges together after her father died, but somehow we got through it. And somehow that little box just reminds me that you can get through a lot of things. So if the house caught on fire, I think I'd go for that.